The sun glared down on the California freeway like it had something to prove. A white Lamborghini cut through the traffic like a blade, sleek, vicious, and untouchable. Behind the wheel sat Victoria Langford, a billionaire who had conquered the tech world by age 30 and left a trail of broken competitors in her wake. Sharp suits, sharper words, and not a drop of humility in her veins. The world was hers and she knew it. That's why she didn't flinch when the light turned red. Rules were for other people, but fate doesn't care how much money you have. A semi barreled through the intersection. 1 second she was smirking. The next, metal screamed, glass shattered, and the world spun sideways. Her car flipped twice and slammed into a streetlight. The air filled with smoke and silence. Then, footsteps. Out of the haze, a silhouette emerged. 12 years old, wiry, dark-skinned, eyes wide with fear and resolve. Malik Carter didn't know who she was. He just knew someone needed help. "Ma'am?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Are you okay?" Victoria opened her eyes, blood streaking her brow. She saw him and snarled, "Don't touch me!" Even as her life hung by a thread, her pride and her prejudice survived the wreckage. Malik flinched but stood his ground. He could have walked away. Instead, he made a choice. A quiet, defiant choice that would alter both of their lives forever. Malik ignored her venom. The smell of gasoline was thick now, and a thin stream of fuel trickled from the mangled undercarriage. One spark, one careless flicker, and they'd both be ash. "We have to go," he said louder, urgency cracking his voice. Victoria tried to push him away, her limbs barely working, her diamond-studded bracelet snagged against the crushed interior. "Don't touch me," she growled. But the boy had already made up his mind. He grabbed the twisted door and yanked with everything his skinny arms had. It groaned, resisted, then gave. Smoke curled around them like a snake. Malik ducked in, coughed hard, then dragged her limp frame out, inch by inch. She was heavier than he'd expected. Her expensive heels scraped the pavement. They made it maybe 10 steps before the car erupted behind them in a fireball. The blast knocked them to the ground. Heat seared their backs. Malik lay still for a second, heart pounding. Then he sat up, breath ragged. Victoria lay next to him, coughing, stunned. She turned her head to the boy who had just saved her life. No words, just disbelief. For the first time in her gilded, self-obsessed world, she had no control. When Victoria opened her eyes again, she was wrapped in sterile white sheets, the beep of hospital monitors filling the room. Her assistant, Lauren, stood at the foot of the bed, tablet in hand, face pale. "You need to see this," she said, voice tight. Victoria blinked at the screen. News headlines scrolled like a punishment. Black boy saves billionaire bigot. Victoria Langford refuses help, saved anyway. Karma catches up to the Queen of Ice. Her heart slammed in her chest. No, she thought, this isn't real. Comments flooded beneath every article. She got what she deserved. That boy's a hero. Maybe money can't buy a soul. Images of her limp body in Malik's arms had gone viral. Not the way she wanted the world to see her. Broken, powerless, indebted to someone she once would have stepped over. She tried to sit up, but pain pulsed through her ribs. She'd survived the crash, but she couldn't survive the narrative. For years, she'd controlled the headlines, silenced whistleblowers, outmaneuvered journalists. But not this time. This time, the world was watching, and it wasn't clapping. Her empire hadn't just cracked, it was crumbling. And at the center of it all stood a boy she couldn't forget. A boy who had no reason to help her, but did. That truth, more than the crash, unsettled her, because it meant something in her, something ugly, had just been exposed. Days passed. Victoria stayed behind drawn curtains, away from cameras and judgment, but she couldn't hide from herself. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. That kid, Malik, eyes full of grit. He didn't ask for money, didn't chase fame. He just did what was right. She tried to justify her actions, the fear, the instinct, but the words tasted bitter. She'd built her empire on control, but now the story was no longer hers to tell. The board was whispering. Investors were nervous, but it wasn't the business she worried about. It was the shame, real shame. not the kind that can be spun away by a PR team. He doesn't want anything from you, Lauren had said quietly, reading her mind. Not money, not favors. Victoria didn't believe it. Everyone wanted something. But this boy, he left her with nothing but her own conscience. That's what burned. That's what kept her awake. So finally, one night, without telling anyone, she made a decision. She needed to look him in the eye, not for closure, for understanding. The Rolls-Royce didn't belong here. It coasted through Malik's neighborhood like a ghost ship, too quiet, too polished. The buildings sagged with age. Windows were boarded, sidewalks cracked. Kids played with flattened basketballs in streets painted with potholes. Victoria stepped out, heels clicking on broken pavement. Her tailored coat drew stares. Suspicion, amusement, pity. She'd never seen this world before. Not in person. Not outside her charity galas and tax write-offs. A few steps in, and she already felt the weight of every dollar she'd ever earned. Malik sat on the stoop of a faded apartment building, sketch pad in his lap. He didn't even look up. "You're late," he said flatly. Victoria blinked. "Excuse me?" He flipped a page. "People like you always come eventually, when the headlines get messy." Her jaw tightened. She stepped closer. "I came to thank you." Still no eye contact. "You don't have to." "No," she said firmer. "I owe you." Finally, Malik looked up. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. "You don't owe me," he said. "You owe them." He gestured to the kids nearby, barefoot, laughing, unaware of her empire. She followed his gaze. They had so little, yet somehow they looked freer than she ever had. For the first time, Victoria Langford didn't feel powerful. She felt small, and maybe that was a start. The next day, Victoria came back. No cameras, no entourage. Just her. She didn't announce herself. She walked into the local school like she was walking into a boardroom, except this time she listened instead of leading. She sat in classrooms where the paint peeled and the heat barely worked. She listened to teachers speak with fire in their voices and kids speak with hope in their eyes. Hope that didn't come from money, but from resilience. She met a girl who could recite entire science textbooks from memory and a boy who built robots from scrap metal. And for the first time in her life, Victoria didn't feel like the smartest person in the room. She felt like a student. She started asking questions, real ones. "What do you need? What's stopping you? How do we fix it?" And she didn't write a check. Not yet. She just absorbed. And Malik? He watched from the back of the class, said little, just observed. The boy who saved her life didn't want praise. He wanted consistency, and she could sense that. The way his shoulders stayed tense every time she walked by, waiting for her to disappear like all the others. But she didn't, because something inside her had shifted. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was gratitude. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the first flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Humanity. When the news broke, the internet braced for another PR stunt. "Victoria Langford donates $10 million to underserved schools," the headline read. Critics sharpened their knives. But then, she showed up, again and again. Not just with checks, with time. She met with school boards, walked through housing projects, took notes. She started an after-school program, launched mentorships, spoke to lawmakers. For the first time, she used her power not to elevate herself, but to lift others. Slowly, the public softened. Not all at once. Some still doubted her, but the children didn't. The teachers didn't. And at the back of every assembly, every ribbon cutting, Malik Carter stood silent, watching, still unsure, until one day she handed him a microphone. "This is the boy who saved my life," she said, her voice thick. "He showed me something I'd never seen. Not weakness, not pity, courage." Malik froze, all eyes on him. Then slowly he stepped forward. "I didn't do it for thanks," he said. "I did it because it was right." No applause, just silence. Respectful, stunned silence. And for the first time, Malik saw her not as a billionaire, not as a symbol, but as a person. And maybe, just maybe, people could change. Maybe. A few weeks later, Malik came home to find an envelope slipped under the door. No logo, no note, just his name, handwritten. Inside, a scholarship offer from a private academy. Full ride, housing, supplies, mentorship, a future. No cameras, no speeches, just a path. He stood there, still in the doorway, staring at it like it might vanish. His mom came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands. "What's that, baby?" He held it up without speaking. She read it once, then looked at him. Really looked. Tears welled in her eyes. "She did this?" Malik nodded, still stunned. Later that night, he stood outside, sketchpad in hand, looking up at the skyline. The same towering buildings Victoria once ruled with steel nerves and cold ambition now looked reachable. Not easy, not guaranteed, but possible. He flipped to a blank page, pencil poised. Then he wrote one word at the top: tomorrow. Because sometimes power isn't about control. Sometimes it's about giving someone a shot at something more. So let me ask you, would you help someone who despises you? Would you risk everything for a stranger who wouldn't even say thank you? Malik Carter did, and in doing so, he cracked open the heart of a woman who'd forgotten what it meant to feel. He didn't save her for applause or headlines. He did it because it was right. And sometimes, that's enough to change the world. Let me know what you would have done. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is forgive.